hymn because it talks about something that's integral to this story, which is so often we do something good, not maybe for the best of reasons. Sometimes we have our own motives are complex. And they're not just good or not just bad, but they're a mixture of all these things. So when we look at Pharaoh's daughter rescuing this Hebrew child, right? It's the ultimate in adoptions here. Did she do a good thing for a bad reason? Was it more complex than that? Was it mixed? What was it like for the other people in the story? What about this woman who gave birth to her son and had to give him away to save his life? Or the sister, who had to follow, trying to make sure that Moses is saved? How many other brothers had she seen go by the wayside? I want to share with you another version of this story. It's from a book I've read multiple times, and I go back to it often because it has such great stuff in it. I'll try and stay out of the limelight here. It is called I Chose Miriam. So Miriam being the sister of Moses. She says, you don't actually usually think of this as my story. You don't even know my name. And that's okay if the story is about Miriam. Her courage, her leadership, her voice. But my guess is she's overlooked too. For the men, her hero brother, and my villain father. This is Pharaoh's daughter. Since I began to open my eyes and ears, I have been turned upside down by what it means to share DNA with those who commit genocide. There are two things I can't deny. My ancestors sought to destroy indigenous peoples out of racial superiority, out of missionary zeal, out of lust for the land, out of illusions of purity. My ancestors, my own father, Pharaoh, my own blood, and I benefit from this legacy. I have privilege I cannot disown. Pharaoh's daughter has all the privilege, all the power in this story. She gets what she wants. She gets a baby boy. Only because of the oppression of the Israelite people. It would be easy to try and disown that privilege. I mean, I'm not the crown. I'm not a man in a man's world. What power do I really have? Yet my lineage, my color is royal. I want for little my comfort from what my settler ancestors have taken from the indigenous peoples, land, resources, and labor. Any child of mine would be safe. When we think back, and I'm hoping that your minds are already going to this place, how many indigenous children were forcibly adopted here in Canada? How many indigenous children were sold for a better life? It's the same thing. It's an overwhelming power, in our case, the power of the crown, the power of the settler, the power of white, quite frankly, that was able to look at indigenous peoples and say, your ways are not our ways, they must be wrong, we will save them. When I met Miriam at the river's edge, it was a moment where I had to make a choice. To collude with my father or strive to ally with the women, Miriam, her mother, Shipra, Hua, who dared to defy him. The story says I took pity. I hope it wasn't that. Yet victim and savior narratives are so ingrained that it could have been. What I hope is that it was simply a human response to an injustice. And more importantly, is saying yes to Miriam. There was, of course, nothing simple about it, and there never, ever, ever is. It was a no in the face of genocide. I will not let this baby die. I think I did what I could to stand with one girl, support one boy, to ally with one family. I know it didn't shape the foundations of my own privilege. She doesn't lose anything by this. Right? She lost nothing by this. We often have, I was talking to a friend of mine who has adopted a son, and we often have these beautiful fantasies around adoption, that they are always, that there's this uplifting and joy as a child is adopted into a new family. But we always forget that the adoptions are always rooted in tragedy. A woman who can't keep her child, a family who can't keep them together, children who are in unsafe environments, and women who are unable to bear their own children. You know, and the trauma that goes along with that. That while the actual adoption may culminate in something quite joyful, it is rooted in huge amounts of tragedy and sorrow. My mind and my heart we should never forget the many others that did not survive, and that the genocide goes on. I wasn't brave enough to stand up to that. Looking back, I often wonder if my decision was the right one. Yes, for Miriam's brilliance, Moses spent his early days with his own family, in his culture, in his language. But then the only way to ensure survival was to bring him into my world and assimilate. I should tell you, it'd be unfair if I didn't, that I was childless. Was this a solution to my own grief? To fill my own emptiness? Did my own needs make me unable to see bigger possibilities? Did I do right for me and call it allyship? Was it the right step in a wrong world, or the wrong step in a world that could have been made more right? It felt subversive to draw from the empire's resources to support this child, a child the empire would have destroyed. There's no revolution, no jubilee, but a small, tiny symbol. A conspiracy of hope. In an interview one time, I was asked, how do you connect the Bible and all of its stories, all of its scriptures, how do you find a way to connect that into today's world? And my answer was honest, and unfortunately, I have a little bit of what Jude has. Things come flying out of my mouth long before I censor them. We help each other out a lot. But my answer was, how can you not? How can you not see us in biblical stories? That particular story of rescuing this child from... So here's the empire oppressing the people, causing his family not to keep him, and all these boys to die, and yet it is somebody from the empire rescuing him. Right? That's the story of Canada, right there. The empire oppressing the indigenous peoples and then using the resources of the land of theirs to rescue indigenous peoples. It's kind of a weird spiral, isn't it? It's so honest. It's so true. And it's so relevant. And it makes it so hard for us to move. We're good church people. We believe in change. We believe that this world can be a more equitable, better place. And it's hard to move forward. When we look at movements like Black Lives Matter, I don't think we have a chance anymore. We don't have a choice anymore but to move forward. But how do we do that? And I think that's where we get to where looking at this story really helps us see that we can do good things with not great motives behind it. But even so, it's always complex, and we always need to look at it and pull it a bit apart and find out what's happening. There's more to the story, there's more to the detail. You know, Pharaoh's daughter used her privilege to lift Moses up, to give him a good life, to give him the opportunity to be educated. And what does he do? Spoiler alert, in case you forgot. He murders one of them. Moses ends up murdering an Egyptian. Can you picture that in today's world? Right? So somebody rescues an indigenous child from a reservation, from what they think is, you know, living without all the attributes that we think are important in our culture. and they rescue this child, and he turns on them and ends up in jail. Right? We would say, you know the stories we would say. Right? Well, what can you expect? What can you expect? It's an interesting thing. There's a group out on the West Coast, a fellow, a Presbyterian minister, who does a lot of work with Latin American folks who are in prison, mostly men. And they study Moses a lot because these folks, so picture Latin American workers on the West Coast of the U.S., right? They're all farm workers. They're all severely oppressed. They are all, everybody is afraid because, quite frankly, they keep having children because they have large families. It's the same stories we're seeing here. A different color, a different ethnic group, still divided on ethnic lines. And these folks who are in the jail, studying the story of Moses, see Moses, even though, he was brought up and assimilated into this culture of the Egyptians, he murdered one of them, he ran. And yet he was still able to be a hero in the story. And they look at Moses and identify with him strongly and say, there is hope for us. I can still do good in this work. God can still use me. So it's an interesting thing. So we've looked at the story from two different ethnic views, right? It's easy to see Moses as an indigenous child, the Pharaoh and their family as the settlers. It's easy to see it in the Empire and the States, the Latin American workers. So here's the thing that I find interesting, and I think we do this naturally because we're good Christians. We tend to identify with the Israelites, don't we? We tend to want to be the Hebrews. Go Moses, go Hebrews. We cheer when they cross the Red Sea. Unfortunately, we're not them. We're the Empire. We're pretty much the Egyptians. We're the ones with power. We are the ones that can affect change in this world. We are the ones who are still living out a legacy of oppression. It's hard to hear, isn't it? We're the Egyptians. It's not pleasant. But here's the thing that's really great. The Pharaoh's daughter was terribly flawed. She had lots of stuff going on, right? She wasn't all that altruistic. But she still managed to make a huge difference in one person's life. Did you guys ever hear that story of the starfish on the beach? And the little kid throwing the starfishes back in the water? And there's hundreds of starfishes out there, and each one she's picking up and she's throwing in the water. And her mom asks her, you can't save them all. Why are you bothering? And she says, but I can save this one. And continues to throw back in the water. Okay? We can all make that difference. Pharaoh's daughter did it with one child. When we talk about making a difference in this aspect from a race point of view, we talk about doing disruptions, small disruptions, little things, and opening our eyes to be able to see it. How many people have read this story before or know the story of Moses? This is not a grading on your Sunday school classes. But by hand, how many knew the story of Moses quite well? Did you ever see yourself as the Egyptian? Did you ever want to see yourself as an Egyptian? We don't. I want to be the hero. You know who I want to be? I want to be Shipra and Pua. Define, take it to the man. That's who I want to be. And I'm not. That owning who I am allows me to move forward. So we were talking the other day. There's been a couple of instances. I helped lead a webinar on Christian education through an anti-racism lens the other day. And I shared a couple of stories that changed my viewpoint really heavily. I was in Grassy Narrows First Nation, part of my training. It's an indigenous community way up near Kenora. To me, that's way up north, by the way. And I was there, and we were talking with a band counselor, Jason Hedges, and they had just had a pretty major event happen, and we were all intense and serious, and then he totally changed his track, which I found was common, and he said, "Hey guys," and there was 8 of us in our delegation, "why don't you come over tomorrow? It's my little daughter's birthday. She's turning 6, and you can come over to our house for the party." So we said, "Yeah, what would you say?" And we went to Jason's house, and we played volleyball, and we ate spaghetti and Caesar salad, and we ate a giant unicorn-themed cake because she's a girl and she's 6 and wanted unicorns. And Jason said to me, "Do you now see that we're just like you?" And my instinct is to go, of course I did. I'm an enlightened settler. And I didn't, because I happened to be reading a book that told me don't. And I said, yes, I do. His experience of settlers had told him that I don't think he's like me. And if I tried to tell him I did, that would negate his entire experience, his lifelong experience, and I don't have the right to do that, because it's not mine. A little while later, we were doing a decolonization exercise on the same trip, and this Indigenous woman was leading us through this exercise, and at one point it was powerful, and it was moved, and I started to choke up, and I thought I might cry. And I'm thinking, oh, this is such a great exercise, I'm feeling so emotional. And it dawned on me right about then, if I cry, this poor Indigenous woman who is leading an exercise is going to have to comfort me. She's going to comfort me, and I have never experienced any of this of having my children taken away. None of this experience that we're talking about has affected me at all. And yet it had affected her. This was her story. So here's a white person about to cry about a fictional exercise where my child was taken away when it really happened to her. And I stopped myself. Last story I want to share with you about race. I walk with the Bear Clan Patrol, which is a street patrol, and we go around, we do the downtown floor on Friday nights, we do all up here, and Centennial Park on Saturday nights. And we wear bright crossing guard vests. They're actually city vests. You can't miss us, we're bright, so we don't get hit by cars when we're in the dark, in the alleys. And several of us are going down the parking lot over at Delta Bingo, which is a hangout for a lot of police. Not sure why. There's no donuts. I don't know what deal there is there, but they hang out there a lot. And I'm walking along. Now, I don't think I look intimidating. Some of you may see different, but I don't think so. Maybe just you. But I'm pretty small. I'm kind of old. Got my crossing vest on. And this 4x4 cop pulls up beside me, hits the siren, which was missing. I think it was new. And then hit those floodlights on me. And I am frozen. I can't move. I can't see. I am done. I am just here. Until he finally spoke to me. I explained what we were doing. And he finally drove off. But for about another, I'm going to say 5 minutes, my eyes still hadn't recovered. I didn't know where I was going for a minute. And then I got mad. Furious. Righteous indignation. Who do you think you are stopping me? A little old lady walking down the street in my crossing guard vest. What are you thinking? And it took me days. And I say this because this doesn't come to us naturally. It took me days to realize that what privilege I had to be angry. If I was a young black man, I'd have been terrified. As a little old white lady, I have crack loads more power, more privilege than anybody like that. And I need to know that, I need to own it, because then I can do something with it. Then I can change the world. But until I see it, I can't change the world. And to see it, I have to realize, crap, I'm an Egyptian. I didn't want to be an Egyptian. I didn't ask to be an Egyptian. I could be easier not to be one. But that's what I am. These stories are timeless because people are the same. We haven't changed a lot in, I'm going to say, 3,500 years. I passed school, my worst mark was in Christian history, so there you go. In about 3,000 years, we haven't changed a lot, have we? There's still oppression. There's still imbalance. There's still power differentials. What I pray to God has happened now, and what I believe is that God softens our heart and opens our eyes so that we can understand what we have and what our opportunities are, what we can do with that. I had a guy, I got into quite a hefty email exchange because that's where you have these sites. It's on Facebook, right? Facebook, all that. And he was upset about people sleeping in Montebello Park. Vagrants, he called them. Vagrants. And I'm like, wow, can you be a vagrant if you don't have a home? If you've got nowhere else to be, are you really a vagrant? And I wrote, it's a public park, and he's a member of the public. He can sleep there. There's one fellow, only one fellow sleeping in Montebello Park, by the way. So this fellow finally private messaged me and asked me, well, what can I do? And I said, you know what you can do is you can come out with us. You can come out and talk to people and you can learn their names. You can learn to see people. And you can stop saying it's a vagrant in the park and learn that his name is Shane. And he plays beautiful guitar. And he's still in touch with his mom. That's what you can do. We all have a different path to enlightenment, right? We just need to find our own. And it's so exciting. You guys are on such a threshold here at Westminster. You know, this is my home church, and I have never been more excited about it as now. You know, this whole community is changing, and you have an opportunity to be an anchor, to be the community base. Between you and the elementary school, you guys are the base of this community. And you have an opportunity to really decide, what do you want this community to look like? You want it to be, we talk about things called gentrification without slavery. Jerome and I were talking about it, right? We're going to see some upmarket stuff happening around this community. How many people are going to get moved out because of that? Or are you going to be able to help keep it and make it a blend? So that there's not Egyptians and Hebrews. There's not people with houses and vagrants. But you guys have the opportunity to say, we are a blended community of God's people. The diversity of Christ's table, all the people we brought to the table, can be reflected in this community. And that's what you guys have a chance to do. This is what happens when I don't write things down. I can go on forever. I should shut up now. And we should sing a song. What do you think? Let's do that. Thank you.